Hey, this is Brook with Printrbot.com. We're doing Printrbot Live. Welcome, if you're just arriving. And it's about 4:33, so we are 4 minutes late now, 4:34. And I've only got about 20, 25 minutes. In fact, on my watch, it's telling me why I've got a Sierra College. Something just fell. Sierra College is a local college. They're a community college. And if you guys, I know you remember Brian Rowe. He used to be my engineer, and I miss him dearly. I'm going to go see him at this Sierra College thing because now he is teaching. He's like a teacher's assistant at Sierra College, and they're opening up a brand new, I think they've titled it, I forget the guy's first name, but Haas, which makes CNC equipment. They've got a big wing opening up at Sierra College for digital manufacturing, and I get to go see all the awesome equipment there at Sierra College, so they're having a dinner. So I'll be off to see Brian and enjoy some CNC stuff tonight, but I don't have very long, so I do want you to hit me up with questions. When I don't have a lot of time, I like to just blather about with any questions that you may have. So Dave, keep them coming and wave if I'm not seeing it. A little different setup today. These are, the gray ones here are the prosthetic bot that we've been manufacturing. And we finally got to, I would say 1.0. And the funny thing is now that we're getting ready to even drop ship for this company, we have to send 15, within the next week we're going to send 15 of these printers off to Create O&P. I think it's createonp.com, so you can check them out. But they do prosthetics. And so they're using 3D printing, a lot of spiral printing with big high-flow nozzles. And they've streamlined the software workflow, and they provide services and stuff. But it's a really cool application of 3D printing because, you know, a lot of the time spent in 3D printing is infill. You got to fill in when you're doing something big. When you have to fill in everything, it takes a lot of time. Well, they've developed some proven methods of doing a really thick spiral. It's basically like a spiral. It's for legs. Spiral print, so there's no infill. And they've manufactured some custom rubber pieces, and so there's a sleeve, a hard, I forget if the outside is hard or the inside, but anyway, they've got flexible materials and stuff. So they found us from, you know, Jeff has been following the 3D printer space for quite a while, and he's really an expert in slicing and designing this organic type needs for somebody that needs a leg. So he's branching out with a bunch of cool ideas, but we're happy to be working with him. I just thought since we're getting ready to ship these 5 out, actually one's out there. We've got 5, but I wanted to show, I wanted to go through some of the features that this has because I want to show you the difference in how the Pro, the Plus Pro is similar. Can you get this in the shot over here? Really? That is a wide angle lens. Is that my whole face? Anyway, so this one right here is the Plus Pro. And it does not have the lid on it. We are going to put the lid on. And so these are pretty similar, but the big difference is around the back here. Jeff wanted a bot that can be upgraded over time. So these are metal, and they're very, very, they're going to last a long time. Because he's asked for, come on, the electronics reside inside this box on the back, so it's completely, you know, separate. And so this is a Meanwell power supply that powers the printer board, which powers the hot end. And this is the power supply for the LEDs. So he's got 2 little power supplies in here, one dedicated to the LEDs. And it is using a regular printer board. He wanted that. It's not on here. It's on one of these machines, but he wanted that because he wanted SD card support. So you do have to reach around the side and put in your SD card, but it is an adapter that goes to a full-size SD card. By the way, those are on Amazon. Let me go around the back here and look. One of these has it installed. Yeah, this one does. You guys may be interested. One of the things that I can't, 5 years later, 6 years later, you can't really get around the mistakes that you've made. And one of the mistakes that I made it's just one, in designing our printer board. I mean, I didn't design it, but Lane did. And I wish I would have pushed him a little bit more on this. I wish I would have included a full-size SD card slot because it's just more convenient. It has more to hold on to when you're putting your file in and out. So these little micro SD cards are kind of a pain in the butt, sometimes hard to reach. So this one has it installed. I got to unplug it. I'll show you what we do for that. These are available, I believe, on Amazon. There's a little adapter. And this is going to be Brook wandering around the whole time. So, Dave, bear with me. I'm going to grab one. This little guy is made by a company called Seiko, S-A-I-K-O. And it adapts. It's just a really thin PCB board that you plug into your SD card slot, and then it gives you a full SD card slot, so it's easier to reach. So we made this little adapter. This is a printed piece, but this little adapter just plugs into the side. So can you still see this? Okay. So anyway, this can plug into the side like that, and then we bolt it down, and that gives you access to a full-size SD card slot. So if you can imagine, I'm going to wander over here. So my old Simple here, it's really, really, oh, that one's a bad example. This is one of the first ones I made. And the SD card slot it's kind of a pain to get to. So I usually keep a little pair of pliers around to pull this in and out. There it goes. But if you had one of these card slots, put it in upside down. It's kind of janky looking, but it would allow you to give easier access. These are like 15 bucks. But anyway, so he had some very specific needs. He wanted a full-size SD card slot. He wanted lights. He wanted on the front. Okay. He wanted the LCD panel and a knob to, choose your file, which is nice. He wanted that on the top. So we have these that can stay open. Now, if you remember our LCD panel, it's kind of expensive because we integrated a really much nicer, it's a digital knob here instead of a potentiometer. And so we spent a lot of money developing this, and it just ended up being too expensive. And I know now that there's a lot of cheap Chinese SD card slots and for ramps boards, LCD screens. And I'm working on adapting the printer board, at least figuring out the pin out so that we can support those cheap Chinese SD card slots. Some people on Twitter have been asking about that. But anyway, so there is an SD card slot up in here, but what we found out was that is a long way to go, and it's prone to interference, and then you get these weird characters on the screen. By the way, would you make a note and absolutely remind me tomorrow? These, we have to install a ground strap. A ground strap that goes from here to here. I forgot that on the last ones I shipped. They were not happy. Anyway, but it was funny because even it's just a long way to go for a ribbon cable to get up there, and it won't carry that signal properly for SD card slots, so we had to put it around the back. But he wanted that. He wanted a high-flow hot end, so we developed a custom high-flow hot end. This one is actually 45 watts. Can't buy it from me. It's just for him. And so Carl's hand-making a few of these, but it's a little higher power for high flow. And so it is kind of like the high flow, but ours is 30 watts, 30, 33 watts if you buy a high flow. And instead of having 3 models of a high flow, I just wanted 2. So you jump, if you buy them in my store, you jump from the drop-in replacement high flow 33 watt. He has a more powerful one. But he uses a thermistor, and it tops out at 270-ish, 275, whatever the firmware limits it to. But you go above 300C, and the thermistor really starts to wander off the mark. So our jump is from a high flow to the high temp. And the high temp has a new, I talked at length about it last week, so check last week's video if you're interested. But the high temp goes all the way up to 500C with a new, it's not a thermistor. It's sort of like a PT1000, which is, it's kind of like a thermocouple. So it's very, very, very exact. So our high temp, you got to jump up to 24 volts power supply. And we have a little adapter that converts your 12-volt Printrbot or your 12-volt whatever. You can use this little adapter to just power the hot end through the FET. Switches it on and off, and it gets 12 volts directly. So that's what he chose, this 45-watt. Anyway, and so he has a big fan shroud for lots of cooling, because when you have an enclosed bot, there's a door that will go on the front of this, last thing we do. So it is an enclosed, heated area. It's a heated bed, and it's a 10 by 10 heated bed. So, it's the first bot that I've done, this Plus Pro / prosthetic bot. It's the first one I've done with an enclosure and this dropping Z. And it's the same X and Y for our old Plus, but the Plus, was thin, and the bed moved forward and backwards. So this is more sturdy, and it has a dropping Z. So the X and Y are, stationary on top. So it doesn't move, but the Z drops. And that 10 by 10 build plate is enough to heat up the enclosure. It gets rather hot in there when you have it humming at, close to 100 degrees C. So it's pretty cool. Some materials just perform a lot better. They're a lot more predictable without, the cold environment, especially in the winter. We were testing or not these, but the Pro. We had this one Pro that the heat bed, maybe it was the hot end, but the Pro, when it watches temperature variations really closely and looks for anything out of the ordinary and sounds an alarm and will flash red lights and say, whoop, something dangerous is happening. We could not figure out what was wrong with that thing until I realized, well, it is really cold in my shop. It's not heated. So I said, you know what, we replaced everything on that bot. Let's try to print here in the office, which is heated. We brought it in here, let it heat up for a little bit to ambient temperature, and it worked fine. So heated enclosures, this would work out in a cold shop, but our Pro, it's completely exposed to the air. So, you touch the metal and it's cold. So it struggles against, it got to 30-something Fahrenheit this morning, 34, I think was a low today here in Northern California. So anyway, this enclosed bot really minimizes the problems that you have with the temperature swings. So it is really nice, and I'm sold on it. I really like it. For most printing inside a house, our open printers, non-enclosed, are fine. But this guy, if you're in a shop, you want something like this. But anyway, the Plus Pro is very similar, but this has 14, it has an open bottom, 14 inches of Z. And the bottom is, totally open. And it's funny because I put a bottom on this first, and Jeff said, hey, can you knock that bottom out? Heat rises, so it's not going to let too much cold in. But really, when you're changing out prints or you got some filament, you end up with some scraps of filament on the bottom. And he goes, yeah, they just drop to the ground, and then I just lift it up and sweep it out. But mine, I wanted a bottom. I don't know if you need to adjust, but check out what I did. Instead of putting the electronics around the back, I put my electronics on the bottom. I really wanted them on the bottom, so we can do a very short run, and we're putting the LCD panel down here. So you have access to the SD card slot that's integrated into our LCD panel. So we need to update our pictures on the website. to show what this looks like finished, so we'll finish that out once we ship these. But this Plus Pro is fairly identical, different placement of the LCD panel. The big difference is it's only 12 inches of Z because I had to use that space for the electronics. And the hot end is the high temp on this guy. And it's the first printer that I'm selling with the high temp UBIS 13, so it's going to be 24 volts on the, we'll add another power supply just for the hot end. So I think I'm about to sell my first one of these. You design a new bot, and it's always a slow uptake because people are like, well, I'll wait around for version 2 or for people to, buy it, and so I can find out what kind of feedback. It's really the same electronics as everything else we've sold, so everything's tried and true, but that high-temp hot end has a unique, it does peak and ultim and high-temp stuff. So I really anticipated that to be desirable for labs at schools and universities and people that want to print very, very high temperatures. And indeed, that's our first bite on one of those printers is from a university. So that'll be fun to ship that out. But anyway, so that's what's sitting here on the desk. The other thing I wanted to mention, do we have any questions yet, Dave? If not, ask a question.
How do I order extrusion for the Model 3? I mean, I have a link to Prosthetic, and I can kind of get a product number, but if you have any insight on it.
So the question was, we also put up a Model 3 on Black Friday. That week we put up another model that's new, and it's you've seen me with it if you've watched the show here. It's a tall extrusion, aluminum extrusion printer. The box is all extrusion, and then right on top you set, what we send you is this big XY stage that sits on top and bolts down. And then there's a Z stage that's just bolt in. And somebody was asking, well, how do I order extrusion for that? Well, we use Faztek, F-A-Z-T-E-K, and it's on Amazon. So you can get on Amazon and just order up some. But they are a fantastic company. We called them. I was doing all my cutting, and there's some of the fasteners that you machine holes and slots and stuff for. They have a bunch of different ways that you can connect these bars, these aluminum extrusion rails. And I called them, and they were like, yeah, we'll cut it for $1. So we get everything cut at Faztek now, and they'll even mill. They have all the machines already set up to do all the milling for all of the fasteners. So while it's a little more expensive, it is well worth the trouble. So I've designed a model, and we have a kit that we've worked with them to develop. It has all the lengths needed and the fasteners that we use. Jeff is actually going to be selling a derivative of that. It is intended to be for makers. He's a maker, and he wants to put panels on the outside of that to make it a fully enclosed bot. He's calling it the 5400? What is it? 5400? I call it the Model 3 because it's just bare bones. But he orders rounded extrusion. He's going to have to get new fasteners. It just looks better than the bare bones. But he's making all those decisions. So that is something that you could do. You could order your own Faztek from Faztek and pick and choose your extrusion style. There's lightweight, there's heavy, there's rounded, there's square, and there's a bunch of different fasteners, so you can pick and choose and put together your own box and even put panels on it if you want to. So anyway, that's the Model 3. That's where you get it. We'll make sure that we have our links set up so that you can see what we do. We can even link to the drawing so they can see how it all goes together, the Fusion 360 drawing. It's already there. Yeah. What a great idea, Brook. In fact, we already did it. So you'll use that drawing. You can use that drawing right now. But do we put a BOM of the links to order and such?
The extrusion, I need to get with you to.
Okay. We have, the last PO we have has all the prices and the lengths. And I think they even have a SKU number that they created for us that if you just ask for this specific SKU, they just put all the fasteners and everything in one bag. So trying to be friendly to makers. And why am I making you order that yourself? Well, because if I order it here, We're shipping it twice when that's unnecessary, so it's extra cost to you because I'm not going to pay for it. And if I order something in here, there's really nothing to do. They've already cut it, so I don't need to get it here to cut bars or bag up parts. They do that for you. I have to mark stuff up. If I'm going to spend money, I got to get a markup on it because I got to pay for labor and all the trouble, the shipping. So it just saves you money. And I know it's more trouble, but it's not intended to be a turnkey printer. It's for somebody that wants something really large, and it's for experts that want to build, assemble their own thing. So anyway, that's that. Any other questions?
Update on Dual?
Here's the update on Dual. If you go to Twitter, there's a guy that just posted a benchy in a two colors of filament. I think it was green and black. And somebody asked, what printer did you do it on? And he said, the Simple, my old Simple. And then they asked, well, how did he do that? He says, well, with a 2-in-1. And I don't know if he even saw that I attempted to do that and then stalled miserably. But that 2-into-1, there's a part on Thingiverse that you can, there's even guys that are there's even a company that's selling these that are like injection molded or machined, I forget. But I've seen several people online that do use this 2-into-1 and new firmware. And you got to get some PTFE tube. And it just retracts really heavily, retracts the filament out of the way so I can get this down, the 2-into-1. It's like a Y. And yeah, he printed it on that. So I don't have an update, but you can see that it is not only possible, people are doing it. And the guys on Twitter are pretty cool because they're always happy to show off what they've done and share what they've done. But I need to catch up, so that's my update, a non-update. All right, let's see. Another thing I wanted to do is give a shout-out to the Adopt-A-Bot community. It is so great to see on Twitter and Google, the two that I use. I don't really use Facebook that much, which is hilarious because we're on Facebook right now. But I have seen many Adopt-A-Bots in the wild, people printing their own. They've got kits, and so they're printing the Adopt-A-Bots. And today, just before I came in, I saw that one guy was showing his print, which I haven't seen a lot of. I've seen a lot of people building, or the finished printer that looks beautiful. But I'm starting to see prints from the machine, and this print was beautiful. There's this one artist that did the dragon. It's like Louise Digger or something like that. But anyway, she did this new model of a cat sitting in a box, and it was intended to be a 2-color print. The eyes are gray. And, it's a cool little model, but he shrunk it down and printed it on the Adopt-A-Bot, and it was just a gorgeous print. And I was wondering what settings that he used. I wonder how slow he had to go, or if he had to tweak much to get that really, really nice print. But on Twitter, there's a guy that has printed with it, so you can see that it's not just a 3D printer design. It actually does print. You can print things with it. So I'm just really glad to see some of those Adopt-A-Bots in the wild and working. And I still want, David, this is something that we can do next week, too. I know I've talked about it last week, but we have our list here of people that have said, I will build an Adopt-A-Bot. So next week's my week to ship those out to you. And I think I even have enough. There's a gentleman in the UK that said, hey, if you get me 25 kits, I can get them to builders, and we can start building them and offer those to schools. And they can pay me, and then they can deliver. So I have enough kits to not only fulfill to the builders here that are going to be printing and building, but also 25 to the UK. So, we're small enough where we kind of do, we can't do 25 things at a time. We have a small staff, so we do right now one thing at a time, and it's prosthetics. Before that, it was fulfill the Black Friday orders. But next week, we're going to catch up on Adopt-A-Bot. And then also, I wanted to say this, and then I have to go. Next week, we're going to I reorganized the shop because, we've shrunk down smaller footprint to save a lot of money with just what ended up being storage, really. So we're a little bit tight now, but we've got I discovered in going through all my stuff as I was restacking on shelves, I discovered, man, we have some old pluses, some parts for some old pluses, some old simple metals, and even some plays, and quite a few refurbs. I don't know how many, but quite a few refurbs that just didn't sell. Part of the reason the refurbs don't sell is on Amazon right now. They're running crazy deals on, like the play I saw was $220 on Amazon. So I'm going to get out all of my old parts and put them in the store as kits for people that are really looking for a deal. Now, I'm going to sell them super cheap because you got to build them. I'm not going to build them. I'm just going to take the parts and sell them. So they'll be pretty much in one flavor. So Dave's hearing this for the first time. The flavor that I want to, he heard that I was wanting to sell kits, but I actually want to sell these as hardware only and wiring. So that if they already have a printer board or something else they want to put in it, they can. They'll have to choose their extruder and hot end. But they can buy that separately in the store. So when there's items like that in the store that they can buy, I just want to sell the hardware. So we'll put those up for sale. So if you're looking for a deal for Christmas, since they're kits, they should be pretty quick shipping. So next week you might have an opportunity to get a kit for somebody at a sweet price, like way lower than we've ever offered these, because I just need to clear my shelves out. Less room, less shelf space, gotta clear them out. And with Amazon selling them so cheap, I can't compete with that. I guess they have an overstock and they're selling them cheap for Christmas. But anyway, so some of our legacy models, like you see back here, if you want to pick one of those up, build it yourself, look for that next week. Any other questions? That's it? All right, sorry it's such a short show, but just wanted to let you know what we're working on both this week and next week. And I hope you have a good weekend. Christmas is coming. Hope you're doing your shopping. I'm making my gifts. I will give you I got to show. Dave, if I end up giving you one of these, you got to pretend like you're surprised. Where did I put it? Did you see my bottle opener? No? I'm looking. Dadgummit. When I clean up, I can't find anything. Here it is. I had somebody give, or I think it was my wife. She gave me this for Christmas one year, and I love this. It's a Milwaukee tool, and it's in my it's out in my garage, and I use it for beer, soda, or whatever. So I got my water jet out, and I am making bottle openers. So I got to put a laser cut wood handle on here. So I have been making some of my gifts, and really fun to have a water jet and be able to do stuff with metal. But I hope you're at least making something for someone this Christmas. But anyway, so have a good weekend. Make some gifts. Happy printing. We'll see you next week.